Good. Hey, welcome to your Committee 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. Welcome today, and we're glad to have you here, and I think we'll start with roll call.
Representative Angelos? Excused?
Just-
Representative Burkhart?
Here.
Representative Byron?
Here.
Representative Larson?
Here.
Representative Singh?
Here.
Representative Storer?
Here.
Vice Chairman Western?
Here.
Representative Winter?
Here.
Chairwoman Newsom?
Here,
Thank you.
thank you. So at the beginning of every meeting, I'm supposed to give this really long decorum speech, but mine is a little more abbreviated, be nice or leave. That's the basic premise of how we roll here. So we're going to start, well, yeah, there's some Senate in the House, so I'm not sure. So we'll start with our one and only bill, or Senate file today, which is Senate File 60. And we have both chairman of this committee and the director of the fund. And so if you guys, however you guys want to sort that out, I'm happy to listen to tell us about the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Barry Crago, House District 40, as you said, serve as the House Chair of the Select Committee. And I think the easiest way to turn the explanation of the bill over to our good director. He knows the ins and outs. Obviously, both of us, Chairman Landon and myself, will be here to answer any questions from our end if you need us, but the substance of the bill will be best explained by the good director.
Director Budd. Senator, did you want to say anything?
Well, Madam Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to come and back these guys up in case a fight broke out. But I would say that this bill was well received on the other side, and I was glad to carry it. We've got some good things to share with you today, so
Great.
thank you.
Director Budd, do you want to?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As you recall, a couple introductory comments. As you'll recall, last year we raised the threshold for large projects, which I think at the time I said you wouldn't get 9 or 10 like we did last year, and it'll gradually come back up. But we have 3, and they're very good ones. The other is, just for those who don't understand the relationship on these large projects, the Select Committee was set up at the same time that we created the fund, and there are 3 House and 3 Senate members. We view those, this is a very positive relationship. I know there are some select committees that people grumble about over the years, but I actually went into the Senate a few years ago and said, please keep ours. It's a very valuable relationship because you are aware of everything we do throughout the year through that 6-member select committee. We've grown to where we now do every year in August, our annual meeting, and thank you for attending this year, Madam Chair. We go out on the ground and look at projects, potential and completed, and all legislators are invited to do that with us. But it's become very much more productive. I think it's very good for the communities that have the projects to be able to see that kind of relationship and for you to have an intimate understanding of what we do. So really appreciate the work of the Select Committee, both the House and Senate, and I think it makes us a better program.
Madam Chair, if I might interrupt for just a minute,
Representative
please.
Burkhart.
The bill packet's missing all the even-numbered pages.
Oh. Mine is not.
I don't have them, Madam Chair. He doesn't have them.
Okay,
Thank you.
our good staff will remedy that. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, Director Budd.
So with that, there are 3 large projects this year. I'll walk through those individually, and then if you have questions on each one, we can do that. The other things that you have in the handouts, the second item is all of the projects that were funded this year, and that's calendar year. Everything that we looked at, everything that we funded or did not fund in some cases. And the third is our annual report, which gives you a view of the program over the course of the last 18, 19 years. With that, the first one is the Upper Grable Fish Passage. This is in Park County. It's a project that has been initiated by the Game and Fish Commission, but there are numerous other partners, including Trout Unlimited, the Irrigation District. We've worked on a number of these. Some of you got to see these when we did our tour up there 2 years ago. There includes fish ladders, bypasses, irrigation infrastructure. This one removes the last impediments on 3 different drainages up there. It also eliminates a crossover point which allowed brook trout to get into those headwaters where the cutthroats spawn. That's important because as you look at potential listing of species, our ability to say, look, this species has access to all its historic spawning areas is a huge, huge statement that we can make. And we've done that with all 4 of the different varieties of cutthroats in Wyoming. There are a handful of these fish passage pieces that are needed to be left. This one is one of those, and there are several. You can see the photos in there of the streams and the type of impediments. They're primarily old concrete structures that just basically shut down the whole creek. And what is done in these is you go back in, retrofit them. Some of them still use concrete, but you'll put in a bypass channel. Some of them, we build a set of stepped cross veins in the river or the stream. That allows fish to work their way up, and it still allows the efficient diversion for irrigation. This one is gonna save, these are based on studies that are done on entrainment or fish that don't go in the creek and go down the irrigation canals, and at the end of that, you know where they end up in the field. 20 to 48,000 fish a year. That's significant. Again, if we get a petition to list Yellowstone cutthroats, to be able to say, yeah, we've rectified that. You'll recall a project from last year also in Park County did the same thing. And it was an irrigation infrastructure that we funded, and that's the same kind of thing. So that's the purpose. Landowner is involved both fiscally and otherwise. They've invested a considerable amount in this. Local conservation district and others are also involved. It's a good project. I think you may see this one again when we get done with this phase. There may be a few other things that need to be cleaned up, but this should be close to the end of this project, which it serves that whole eastern flank of the Ozoricus. So I know Representative Winter, you're very familiar with this, but it's a good project. So any questions on that
Any
one?
questions from the committee on this project? I have just one on your handout, and it says the location and all that, and then it says review. And what does the PF and BP mean?
That's who did, so we do not ever fund a project we haven't seen on the ground. And that's the 2 people who did that one. That would be Pidge Fulton, who is our board member from Park County or from the Bighorn Basin, and the BB is myself. The 2 of us did that site visit.
Good. Any questions about this particular project? Representative Storer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Budd, is this on the Pitchfork Ranch?
It is.
Follow up.
Madam Chair, yes.
And so much of the Pitchfork Ranch is state trust land, but not necessarily accessible to the public is the way I think about it. I'm just wondering how close is the nearest public access?
Mr. Director.
Madam Chair, I can't answer that specifically. I do know there's public access on several of the streams that would be affected by this. In particular, one of them, there's an access road, I think it's a county road that goes up through the backside of the Pitchfork. It'd be on the north side. That allows access to, Representative Winter, you may have to help me with the name of the stream, but I want to say it's Diamond, but that's not right.
On the Grable River?
Above the Grable, yeah. Pickett's one of them, yes. And so there is some access. That is not a part of what we do and when we do these projects, because by statute we can't. But I think there's significant access around the edges. I don't know what their policy is on allowing access on the private.
Anything else, Representative? Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to Baggs Valley Headwaters 3.
Baggs Valley Headwaters 3 is, this is what triggered it to become a large project. It exceeded that 400,000. This grant is for 350. You'll see in the bill that the total amount is different. That's because the previous 2 phases are in there. This is another really good project. All 3 of what you have here are what you would call landscape scale projects. They affect tens to hundreds of thousands of acres, and they'll do different things. This one treats invasive annual grasses. In this part of the state, it's primarily cheatgrass. It treats overabundance or overgrowth of oak, which can tend to just choke everything else out. That allows a release of bitter brush and a mahogany and other species that are really important for deer in the winter. And it's a treatment of aspen. And those aspen stands have gotten somewhat decadent. You take those down and you'll get sprouting, thousands of stems per acre. Those are also important primarily for mule deer. But you have sage grouse here, you have Columbia sharptails, you have a number of other species. This one is on BLM land, private land, state land. It's, again, you draw a big picture and say, we're gonna hit this whole area, and it just expands outward. The projects that we do almost always do that. You'll start with one or two landowners. Everybody kind of looks, I've always said a barbed wire fence is not a wall, and you can look right through them, and somebody will look and say, kind of like the looks of that, and then you just add to it, and that's one of the successes that we've been able to have. Again, it removes invasive conifers. You can see the photos there, the landscape, what it looks like. The photo on the first page is an area that was treated, and the yellow in there, you can see where those aspens were knocked down. You can see where the primarily oak brush was, Gamble oak was taken out, and you get the regeneration of sagebrush, bitterbrush, and other species that are highly, highly valued by deer. So another really good landscape project. This one, the site visit was Mike Massey, Don Schramm, and myself. It's about 30,000 acres for this one within 150,000 that would be the total treated area. A lot of benefits. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? All right, moving on.
The final large project this year is Seminole Shirley Habitat. This is in the center of the Wyoming, center of the state. It's as you can see, a big project, almost over $4 million total. This one, a quarter of this funding, a little over a quarter of this funding is coming from Rocky Mountain Power Mitigation Fund, which was specifically required to compensate for sage grouse. That was a requirement of the BLM. The BLM did not feel they could handle that in a way that was most efficient. We have stepped in by agreement with them. We handled the money, we handled all the grants and did that. This one would be about another quarter of it. The remainder would come from Game and Fish, from federal agencies and others. It is a complete rangeland restoration project. It includes invasive treatment, fence modification to allow wildlife passage, riparian area enhancement, a lot of that through what's called Z-dike structures, which go into these draws and gullies and allow them to heal, and then that retains water, so you have water at the surface, which is very valuable for sage grouse, for neotropical migrant songbirds, for some of your small mammals and those kind of things. There's sagebrush rejuvenation through mowing, and removal of conifers, again, which are invasive conifers, primarily juniper, but limber pine, there are others that come in and create problems. It's about 320,000 acres total for sage grouse, mule deer, elk, antelope, and grassland birds. It also enhances those livestock operations that are using both private and federal and state lands out there.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Bud, I know obviously you don't work for Game and Fish, but do you know if Game and Fish can use Pittman Robertson funds for these types of projects?
Director Bud.
Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, I believe they can.
I don't think I see any the agency folks. So just
I know that there
we're
are.
curious.
I don't follow all those federal funds, thank God. But they do use a lot of the different funds that come in, whether it's Wallop Bro or Pittman Robertson or whichever. They are the ones that blend those. They also use their own trust fund money, and then they use money that the commission allocates. So as an example, on the Baggs Valley one, there's a group they have called the Mule Deer Initiative, and that's usually about $500,000 a year. I sit on that selection committee for them, and money has been allocated from that source to there. And so it's a blending of numerous sources of funding. If you look at that one as a good example, you've got federal money from the Chiefs Award, which is the chiefs of the Forest Service and NRCS, put in several $100,000. They also have an RCPP, which is a resource conservation program. We have a lot of those in Wyoming. Per capita, we probably have more than anybody. That's another source of funding. So one might pay only for invasives, another one might only pay for aspen treatment, but we're able to blend that. The beauty of our program is we can come in and say, yeah, we'll pick up the shortfall on this one. You've got enough federal money to do all these. Do that with those. We'll backfill over here, and you can do these landscape scale projects.
Follow up? Any other questions? So I think we'll just move, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. So what you're telling us is that the funding is basically taken care of for all three projects. Is that correct? Did I understand you rightly?
Director Bud.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure I understand the question as far as the,
Well, I look at these projects, it looks like only one of them, the one at Bags, is fully funded with the request for the appropriation and what they got for a grant. But the other two, it looks like the one on the Upper Grable is short, what, about $250,000? And the other one is short, what about, quite a bit, over $1 million.
Director.
Madam Chair, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I should explain that better. So if you'll look at the Upper Grable, their request was for $1,250,000. When Mr. Fulton and I went out and looked at the project, there were some aspects of it that we didn't agree with. As an example, they wanted to drill 2 stock wells, where clearly, in our opinion, one was adequate. So we didn't fund one of them. If they want to drill 2, the landowner can do it, or they can find other funds to do that. There are other pieces in there that we felt perhaps their estimates were a little off. So it's very common for the board to come in and say, no, we'll get a little haircut here, just like you do upstairs. You're going to get a little bit of a haircut here. We'll see if we can't do it. If not, they can always come back, but they can find other funds. The difference between that and the Seminole Shirley one is that that one is fully funded. That the amount of that total, a lot of that is coming from other sources. So we're picking up that back end piece. As an example, you've got $1 million plus in there from the Rocky Mountain Power mitigation settlement. There's money in there from BLM. There's money in there from Game and Fish. That total is what that project costs. You can see the kind of leverage that we get out of them by putting, when we get in there and we're at a quarter of it or whatever, the state gets tremendous leverage out of these projects. So, but there are different reasons for them being different. That's 2 good examples right there. The final thing I would say, Madam Chair, Representative Winter, is they can always come back, and I expect you'll see Seminole Shirley again. That's a big old piece of country. And this is like the 3rd phase. It goes literally from Douglas to Medicine Bow. That project will go that, it will be that big in the end.
A follow-up, Representative? No, okay. Anybody else, questions? Oh, Representative Storer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Budd, looking at the Seminole Shirley Habitat Project and thinking about the invasive annual grass removal work and the discussions we've been having with the budget too. And you're talking about a landscape that's 320,000 acres, but trying to address the invasives on 60,000. And so one question is, do you guys, I realize it differs on different terrain, but do you have a approximate cost per acre on removing invasive annual grasses? And the second part is just the question about like how to think about the importance of removing that 60,000 invasive, the invasive on the 60,000 acres and what that does to the rest of the landscape. Thank you.
Director Bud.
Madam Chair, Representative Storer, the average cost for using Rejuvra, which is a chemical that actually works on cheatgrass, is about $150 an acre. And that, I mean, that's pretty consistent across the state. We can get that down a little if we do more acres because your helicopter is there one time, not 2 or 3 or 4. You don't have mobilization costs. Your chemical cost remains the same, so you get efficiency as you get bigger scale. 60,000 acres as a component of that landscape is probably what we could do in 1 year. the way that the board has always asked people to address this is, don't come and bring me 5,000 acres here, 10,000 acres there, 2,000 acres there. It doesn't do us any good to treat invasives that way. But if you bring a 60,000 acre block and you treat all of that, that allows you to leap from that 60,000 acre block to the next 60,000 acre block. And then you're actually treating landscapes as opposed to putting Band-Aids on small pieces in the landscape. And that's been something that the board has worked really hard on over the last few years. That is why, as you look at the budget request the governor put in, that's why that number was in there, is that we can then start to tackle these on a big scale and not end up like northern Nevada or southern Oregon or some of our states in the Great Basin, where it probably is a lost cause. We have the opportunity here to do this. Where we're at relative to invasives now is we've got this issue, particularly in northeast Wyoming, in central Wyoming, to where we need to be able to ramp up and do these more. I expect you're gonna see a bunch of them next year. This large project bill will probably have landscape scale projects as big as whole counties. And the other thing to tell you, the reason that it was done the way it was, this question came up in the Senate, why didn't they just give the money to the districts? The districts have a small area they can work in. We can work with 5 districts at one time. So that's why, is that we get scale by running it through the trust. Does that answer your question?
Follow up? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If you wouldn't mind just walking us through the bill.
Sure. Page 2 describes, well, page 2 is definitions mainly. Describes the project. The purpose is to remove barriers to fish passage and migration, enhance irrigation, and modify the streams to make them stable. That allows for seasonal movement of native fish. That's the primary purpose. It also improves the production of those riparian areas. If you think about those, and those who went on that tour we did up in Park County, remember we were seeing elk and deer and moose and everything along those streams. It'll reduce and eliminate the potential for predation on native species as well in those areas on those fish. It's a river restoration project. We categorize everything in one of 10 categories, the way that we do them. River restoration is what this one is. As you can see, it has an almost $3 million budget. We came in for $1 million, and that picks up a big chunk of that. There are a number of other, I need to mention this, there are a number of other projects there that have been done that have higher leverage. Usually when you get to the final end and you complete it, the leverage goes down on that project, but the leverage overall remains 4 or 5 to 1. The second, Baggs Valley Headwaters, as I described, it's restoration through mechanical, chemical, and prescribed burns, about 138,000 acres. It's primarily oriented at mule deer, although there are elk, moose, antelope, and other species there. There are migration corridors for native ungulates, which is again deer, moving back and forth between Colorado and Wyoming, moving east and west in the valley. It also has a big effect on sage grouse, which we all know is a priority. We're trying to get through another amendment on sage grouse now, and this is another one that we can put into our ledger and say, yeah, we took care of it. You can see the total project budget, $3.5 million. The total granted, this is what I was referring to earlier, is $698,000, and then the next line appropriates $350. The reason for that is that the total then becomes the 600 plus. So that's the total amount that the Wildlife Natural Resource Trust have in that landscape. This project is $350,000 out of the $2.5 million. Bottom of the page takes us to Shirley Semino. And that's a restoration of the full ecosystem through vegetation management, riparian restoration, fence modification, water development, and invasive species. Again, it's mule deer, elk, antelope are the primary charismatic megafauna, but it's a major area, again, core areas for sage grouse and other sagebrush obligate species. Sage grouse are always the one that gets singled out. There are 72 other species of critical environmental concern that are impacted when we do these treatments. So you're actually benefiting 72 species when you do things that are beneficial to sage grouse. That's important because a lot of those we have no data on. So somebody wants to come in and petition that as an endangered species, we have no data. We don't know anything. But what we do know is that they respond favorably to these treatments. And you can lay that out and say, okay, here's 60,000 acres that have benefited all those species. The total project budget, just over 4 million. And this grant is 800,000, so you're getting 4 to 1 on that. And it's the first time on this one, so it's the 800 is the same as the appropriation is the same as the total. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I think certainly open to any suggestions for amendments or anything else, but pretty straightforward, Madam Chairman.
Committee, any, Daniel? Or, I'm sorry, Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Bud, I'm sorry. Can you, you just said an interesting phrase. Can you just elaborate on what a charismatic megafauna is?
Director Bud.
Madam Chair, Representative Singh, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. Charismatic megafauna are the things that people get ooh and ah over. When you think of megafauna, think elk, moose, grizzly bears, bighorn sheep, and I use that a lot because I think sometimes people don't realize how big an impact we can have on things that we don't hunt or we don't buy licenses for. You know, hundreds of species of neotropical birds that if they don't have Wyoming to breed in, they're gone. You know, I actually wrote an essay one time about standing in Guadalajara, Mexico, and hearing a meadowlark sing and finding it in a cage and thinking, this is just wrong. But if those birds don't have Wyoming to breed in, they don't go to Mexico. You know, and then you take other things like amphibians, which are declining in many areas. We're doing great with those in Wyoming. It's the full range of wildlife species is much more than the things we hunt or hang on the wall. And so charismatic megafauna are the ones we all think of. We see them on the wall, but we don't think about things like bluebirds and hummingbirds and things like that that are an important part of our world. One that I would single out that is probably going to become more prominent in the next few years are pollinators. And so we've got so many native pollinating species in the state. These projects help them as well. And then that's the bottom of your food chain. Everything rises and builds from that. So that's why I use the reference.
Hello? No? Any other questions? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So on page 7, line 12, where it just says unexpended funds shall revert, is that pretty standard? 4 years out, is that standard? And is there any reasoning to behind that date specifically?
Director.
Madam Chair, Representative Larson, another great question. Thank you for asking it. We write contracts. So the way that the trust works is we have a contract with the third party who's going to ultimately get the project done. That contract goes through a whole rigorous process with the Attorney General. We write what they're going to do, what their deliverables are. All of that is done. We do them for 3 years for a number of reasons. A lot of times, one of the criteria we use to fund a project is it ready to go? But let's just say it's a prescribed burn and you get a wet spring. It isn't going to happen. So you kick it to the next year. It's still ready to go. Other projects may run into too wet, too much water. If you look at what happened this last year, a lot of river projects didn't get completed because we didn't get low water until late in August. And that's, normally you'd be into that stream in the end of June. So the 3 years are there. They're almost automatically renewable. I can approve the renewal the first time. If they go to a second renewal, the board has to approve it. But it gives them a reasonable time to complete their project. That's also important because when you start blending federal funds with ours, you want to spend those federal funds first because they'll go back to the Treasury if they don't get them allocated. So a lot of times we'll be at the back end of that. So in that third year, we're paying to finish the project, even though it's been done 2 years before. So it's a money management part. The reversion is important because the way the trust works, it's not general fund money. It's all coming out, unless you add more. It all comes out of the proceeds of the trust account. That money would revert back into the trust account. And the House Senate File 70 this year that changes the structure of how we invest makes that clear as well. So the money doesn't go away, it just goes back. And Hillary Wasserberger, who's our grants manager, who's here, and I just did an exercise with the budget office 2 weeks ago, went through every open project, whether it would be done, when it would be done, whether that money should revert back or whether it should remain encumbered. We do that annually. So that's a long answer, but that, I think it was a great question because you do need to understand those mechanics.
Anything else? Anything else for our good chairman of the select committee or Director Bud? Okay, you guys stay close. We'll go to public comment. Anybody interested in publicly commenting on this? Not seeing anyone rush to the microphone. Okay, anyone online? Barb, no? Okay, we will close public comment then. Thank you for joining us, Senator. I guess what's the pleasure of the?
Move the bill. Second.
Moved by Burkhart, seconded by Larson. Okay, let's just go through the bill. Or does anybody have any amendments? Do we have any amendments? Okay, then I guess we will just roll call vote on the bill.
Question.
Question's been called. We'll have a roll call vote.
Representative Angelos,
Aye.
Representative Burkhart,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Singh,
Aye.
Representative Storer.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Western left an absentee vote of aye. Representative Winter. Chairwoman Newsom.
Aye. So that passes
Nine.
9-0.
9 ayes. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your help. Who wants to floor manage this? Anybody? Anybody? Barry, will you do it? Okay. So Representative Craigle will be floor managing this, and we'll expect backup from our committee if need be. Thank you all for coming, and we're adjourned.